We've made it. We've crossed the finish line. We are at the climax of the Child's Play portion of our regularly scheduled program. And to be honest, it feels like the run through of these 8 films has taken longer than any of our other horror countdowns here on the channel. Maybe I'm just slowing down in my old age. I mean, perhaps I've got to transfer this weary soul into one of these Funkos by me. With my luck, I'd end up screwing it up and I'd wind up in one of my daughter's Bratz dolls. And we can't have that now, can we? Speaking of dolls, though, are we ready to rank a couple of good guys? Let's settle in and play. The easiest decision of my life I've ever had to make, coming in at number 8, is the 2019 remake of our beloved Child's Play. Now, these remakes provide us with a real catch-22 when it comes to horror films, because we always want more of the horror characters and the just chaos that we know and love about these familiar franchises. But when they fumble the ball, and they fumbled massively here, it really stings. And it can set a franchise back badly. I mean, look at Nightmare on Elm Street in 2010 or Friday the 13th in 2009. We still haven't gotten anything more from either one of those guys. Now, Halloween, we've gotten a remake there, and it was hit or miss. Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, they nailed. But here, I did appreciate them trying to bring back Karen, Andy, and Mike, even though he's not the vampire detective that we know and love from the original. I just think everything was Timu-like in quality. Mark Hamill voicing Chucky feels like it should have worked, and it would have been worlds better, but they had to give it that AI twinge. And I just absolutely hated it. Every time I heard his voice, every time I saw him on the screen, I didn't like it. The character model design of the doll was whack. If this would have been anything different, with a different name, different description, maybe it could have found a place. Maybe it could have found an audience that didn't despise it. For me, I just did not like it. And hindsight being 2020, it had a big strike against it when it came out, and they basically dismissed the Chucky TV series. It was one versus the other. And if you've got Brad Dourif on one side of things, when it comes to Chucky, that's the side of things that you're going to navigate yourself towards. That's where you want to be. Swing and a miss, good guy. Wasn't feeling it. So number 7 is Child's Play 3. And when I was little, I loved this movie. And upon rewatching it, I really couldn't figure out why. I mean, we had our friend of the end back, but the resurrection was a little weird. His blood was mixing with the rubber, and then voila, Psychopath was born. And technically, we had Andy Barclay back as well. But the filmmakers jumped forward 8 years, even though this movie came out 2 years after the second Child's Play. So Andy's in his teens at this point. And because his mother, after all this time, is still in the insane asylum, which baffles me, he's got to go to a military academy, which more specifically would be Kent Military Academy. Now, I love new backdrops and new settings for movies or franchises that I adore, but you can keep it in one spot too, and it works out just as well. I mean, Jason was in the woods for 8 movies before we started to branch out anywhere there. Chucky finds out Andy's going to be at this military academy, though. He does a little looking on the computer and is able to figure all that out. And he sets his sights on a glorious reunion with his friend to the end, only to find a much younger Tyler at this military academy that he decides he can trick into his voodoo spell a lot easier than he can pull it off on Andy. He's tried for 2 films and it just doesn't work. That Andy's a tough nut to crack. Brad Dourif is great again. You cannot miss with him in this role. It just feels like he doesn't get much help here, and you can tell, you can really feel when you're watching that running out of ideas for what to do with this irritable little doll of theirs. There's some fun, memorable moments, like when Chucky changes out all the paint cartridges out of the rifles when they're playing war games with actual live ammo. I thought that was really diabolical of him to do. But Chucky didn't become must-seen again on the silver screen until he rekindled a romance with an old and somewhat dangerous flame. Number 6 is Cult of Chucky. Now, in Curse of Chucky, we met Nika, who's a paraplegic, and I was hooked on her as a character. The actress, the whole thing, it was fantastic. So based on what happened at the end of Curse of Chucky, I really couldn't wait for Cult of Chucky to find out where life takes her. And to be honest, the first half of this movie kind of rocked. I mean, based on her insistence that the bodies left behind at her house were the doings of a doll, courts and the legal beagles decided to sentence Nika to a maximum security psych ward where she was safe for quite some time. Then they decide they want to send her to medium security, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Now, like the military academy, setting this at a mental ward was a fun touch. It gave us some colorful patients, it gave us a lecherous doctor, and it gave us some pretty cool set pieces. On top of all that, we got our original Andy Barclay back as a gun nut who keeps a severed head of what we believe to be Chucky in a safe just so he can torture him when he's having a bad day. But if Chucky is there, or his head anyways, in the safe of Andy Barclay, in a cabin with a ton of guns, who's tormenting Nika back at this psych ward? And therein lies the twist, because we find out our old friend Charles Lee Ray just happens to know another voodoo spell where he can separate his spirit or his soul or his essence or whatever you want to call it into pretty much whatever he wants to put it into. And that's where they kind of lose me. But we do get Jennifer Tilly back, and I can watch 90 minutes of her and just probably score it at 7. Not bad, this movie, but we got far better Chucky playdates on the horizon. Curse of Chucky comes in for me at number 5. Now with Curse of Chucky, we got another, not reset, but we'll call it a course correction for the franchise coming off of Chucky spreading his seed in the last film. Now here we get a final girl, wheelchair bound, named Nika, who you are immediately endeared to. And for those of you who don't know, Nika is played by Fiona Dourif, who is the daughter of iconic horror actor and voice of Chucky, Brad Dourif. And she's wonderful here. She fits perfectly in this world. Now, a mysterious delivery arrives at Nika's front door, where Nika lives with her mother in this pretty big, creepy-ish house out in the middle of nowhere. When you know it, it's a good guy doll that has red hair, and he's calling himself Chucky. Nika's mom winds up throwing this doll away because, let's face facts, it's a ginger, and you just can't have a ginger in the house. She's killed that night, though, and that tragedy brings the rest of the film's body count in the form of Nika's sister Barb, Barb's husband, Barb's daughter, and the scalding hot nanny that they just so happen to have with them. This movie works because it tries to tie everything back to the very first film, and you've got an added sense of danger for Nika because she can't get away. She's stuck in that wheelchair, and this is a 3-story house. It's got an elevator, but when the elevator doesn't work later in the movie, she doesn't have a whole lot of options. Chucky also being fixated on Nika's niece Alice, it's a new twist. And some of the things they do here in this movie just feel fresh. Like the Russian roulette sort of scene we get with the poisoned bowl of chili, wondering which of the 6 people are the ones eating this chili. This is all something, not being able to see or predict what's going to happen next is just, it's very welcome for me when I watch a horror film. As we're talking about this, I might even put this one up another notch or two on my rankings depending on what's coming up next. Number 4, we have Seed of Chucky. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. Every single bit of it, from the opening credits to the climax of the movie. But one thing that I can absolutely get on board with is leaning into the strength of a story or a cast or even a trend with how people are viewing your project. And Bride of Chucky was a shot in the arm that this franchise desperately needed after that lackluster third entry. And they follow up on that by celebrating the reproductive system of a pair of plastic dolls under a voodoo curse. The Cliff Notes version is we get to meet the spawn of Chucky and Tiffany. Now, if I physically was able to do so, I would have backflipped once I saw that we get Jennifer Tilly playing Jennifer Tilly. And I'm not going to keep talking about how wonderful I think Jennifer Tilly is, but I think Jennifer Tilly is pretty wonderful. And she's hilarious here. And just let me say this. If you're one of those people that doesn't like your humor bumping uglies with your horror, you're not going to dig this movie in any form or fashion. The Battle of Wills, I had a great time with it. And the Battle of Wills with Chucky and Tiffany based on Glenn, when Glenn shows up and introduces himself as, hey, I'm that thing that popped out at the end of Bride of Chucky. It's just great. They can't figure out if it's a boy. They can't figure out if it's a girl. Is it Glenn? Is it Glenda? It's not anatomically correct. The whole thing is just tremendous. And then when Tiffany decides, we're parents now, we should probably stop murdering things. That whole dynamic with Chucky reluctantly agreeing with his fingers crossed behind his back, Absolutely hilarious stuff. Now, there is a razor thin line between this film and Curse of Chucky with me, but without question, you couldn't have pulled something like this off, this movie Seed of Chucky, with any other killer at the helm. Really, really entertaining stuff. Number 3 is we're going to get controversial because I've had a lot of people argue with me about my take on Child's Play 2, and Child's Play 2 comes in at number 3 for me. Sequels to horror movies can be tricky because we don't know if they're bringing back the characters that we love, hitting us maybe with a complete roster reset, which happens sometimes, or giving us just a little bit of both. And I was really happy to see that we were getting Andy Barclay back for this movie, but I was really bummed, super bummed when the mom was not back and Vampire Detective didn't return. And the studio cited budget reasons, but I gotta call that BS because they made a ton of money with that first film. I don't understand why they couldn't chip these guys off a little bit. But all that aside, we do get Chucky back and Brad Dourif back as Chucky, and he really is starting to round into form with this movie. He's funnier, he's a little more sadistic, and he has his sights set on getting back to Andy Barclay and finishing that damn voodoo chant once and for all, reclaiming this kid as his own. That's the only mission for our little good guy in this film. The story here is because of Andy's mother's insistence that Chucky killed all those people, she winds up getting placed in a hospital for a psychological evaluation. But what about the Vampire Detective? Didn't he say the same thing? Wouldn't he back her story on this? Andy ends up being placed with a foster home for the time being. And the family is meh. I mean, the mother tries. She seems like she cares. The dad's a prick. And Andy winds up getting a big sister out of the deal who winds up looking out for him over the course of the film. Now, there are a couple of legitimately close calls in this movie where Chucky is about to put his soul into Andy's body, and even me saying that right now, that's still one of the creepiest goddamn concepts I have ever heard of in a horror film. But in the process, we see comeuppance for a irritable foster father. We see the meanest teacher in the world that I have ever witnessed since a freshman year at Watauga High School. She gets what's coming to her, and then we have a climax in a good guy factory that was impressive and gruesome enough to leave me wondering how would they bring back Chucky from what just happened to him in this movie. It's a great follow-up to a movie I never really thought that I would like in the first place. Number 2 on the list, Bride of Chucky, and where to even begin with this one. Now, creative forces behind this film had to come up with something to keep interest strong, not only in the character of Chucky, but the stories that the good guy would get himself wrapped up in moving forward. His trip to Kent Military Academy did him no favors in part 3 at all. And coming into the fourth film, it had a lot to live up to when you consider the fourth entry of Friday, Nightmare, and Halloween were absolutely fantastic. It wound up taking the long-lost love of Tiffany Valentine, played by the electric Jennifer Tilly, to bring our mangled malcontent back into our lives and onto our screens again. Now, if you want to talk about chemistry, just look at how well Jennifer Tilly and Brad Dourif play off of each other in this movie. Both while Tiffany Valentine is in human form and when Chucky gets pissed off at her for locking him in a cage and he kills her by electrocution before transferring her soul into the body of a doll herself. And when Tiffany gets all dolled up, so to speak, for herself, that's when the movie really starts to take off. And we went for a hell of a bloody good ride. I didn't really want to get off of it, to be honest with you. We got nods to all the famous horror movie franchises that came before. I thought that was a great touch at the very beginning of this film. Get a little bit of Martha Stewart slander. I mean, they threw it all at us in here. Honeymoon Suite, brutal proposal. We even get Doll Nookie, and I didn't know I wanted to see Doll Nookie, and I don't know that I want to see it again, but it was entertaining for what we got. There aren't enough words. I mean, truly, there are not enough words for how much fun I really had watching this movie, both the very first time I saw it and upon rewatch. Really strong, deserving of number 2. Best in Show, number 1, Child's Play 1988 edition. I had seen Dolls in 1987. I wasn't blown away by it. So when I read about this movie in Fangoria way back in 1988, that was a hard pass. To me, what would make one doll attacking humans scarier than dozens of dolls attacking humans in the movie I had seen just the year prior? Now, sure, this was a ginger, so you've got to take that into consideration, but I just didn't get it. I really didn't get it. So we skipped it at the movie theater, and I wound up renting it from Eagle Country Market when absolutely everything else had either been checked out or I'd already watched it a handful of times. And you know what I found out when I did do that? This was a really good horror movie. I mean, from the get-go, it was intense with the chase between Jerry Dandridge from Fright Night as a cop and Brad Dourif as a bad guy. Then we see some voodoo, mass-produced dolls with freckles, and just a lovely relationship between a mother and a son in form of Karen and her little boy, Andy Barkley. I loved everything about the chemistry between this mother and this son. I just thought it sold the movie because every time one of them was in danger, you really wished the other one was there to lend a hand. Now, as people are dying, Andy is insisting that Chucky is responsible for all of this. And that leads to him being held for observation at a mental hospital. Or at a hospital. Maybe it's not a mental hospital. I don't mean to sound so dire. But he's at a hospital. And Karen's heartbroken while she's confused and looking for answers about all this, everything that's going on. Chucky, on the other hand, he has learned from his voodoo mentor that the only way he's going to get his soul out of that body, that 2-foot plastic body, is to perform the ritual on the first person that he revealed himself to, which leads us to Chucky trying to get Andy cornered to transfer his body into this 6-year-old child. Very creepy, very weird. So this little boy is stalked by the serial killer disguised as a Cabbage Patch Kid for 90 minutes of this movie with random murders and close calls for our whole host of heroes. And I just don't think this could have worked. This type of film could have worked if it didn't have Brad Dourif. He just gives this character life. He's magnetic when he's on screen. You want to see more of him. You know, him hiding in the shadows, and you see those little good guy sneakers scampering around furniture. It's really effective and scary, but it's when he's talking trash and he's cackling that he's at his best in this movie. He made it fun and scary, and it kicked off a lasting franchise that did about as well as you could do for a set of horror movies. I mean, we got a TV series out of it as well. I mean, I was not a big Child's Play fan coming into this review, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I feel differently about it now. I just thought that they did great things from start to finish. There were a couple of stinkers in there. They can't all be first-round draft choices. But man, it all started with this 1988 movie that came out when I was 8 years old. So right around Andy Barkley age. And it was just really, really cool. It made you look at your toys in your room just a little bit differently. Like, what crazy bastard is inhabiting my He-Man right now? That's what I thought before I went to bed every night. It was wild. Let me know what you think of the rankings. I've already had some discourse with people, and luckily I've ran into some good people to talk to it about that didn't get too up in arms about my opinion. They're just opinions. They're just horror movies. They're not life or death situations, even though they're horror movies. We're just trying to have a little bit of fun with it. I'm certainly trying to do that here with this channel. If you dig it, subscribe to it. I would appreciate it. You can click the like, the notification. You can do all that stuff that'll tell you when I'm seated down here, hiding from my kids and talking about old school American horror films. This is Aging Gracefully. I am Matthew Essex. Thank you for sitting in on this one. And yeah, you know the rest. I'll see you on the other side. I have to do that. That's signature stuff.